I find it fascinating that we are going to clean the swamp with swamp creatures. Let me give you a little idea of how that works. Let's start with Christopher Wray. Christopher Wray is the current director of the FBI. He's probably the cleanest one of the high-level appointees of Donald Trump in the last year or so, but hardly clean, and certainly engaged with others that are not particularly suitable for most of us. So he was the Assistant Attorney General in the Criminal Division from 2003 to 2005. And who did he work for? James Comey, who was the Deputy AG. They worked on the Enron case. Then he worked as a private attorney for King and Spalding in D.C. and represented Chris Christie during the Bridgegate scandal. Then he became the replacement of whom in 2017 as the FBI director? Well, none other than James Comey. So we've got a real clear division here. We've got a good guy, right? Except that when he was asked by Ted Lieu of a Democrat of California, is there a deep state in the FBI? Now, this is in the shadow of the Steele dossier, the 4 applications for FISAs against Trump, the whole swamp business having to do with getting Trump and also ignoring Hillary Clinton, not properly prosecuting her, not getting hold of the hard drives, not following through on the emails, not following through on anything that was in Weiner's laptop, and not prosecuting Hillary Clinton or recommending Hillary Clinton be prosecuted for her misuse and mishandling of classified information, which Comey said was just negligent. It was a matter. It was a little bit of a deal. So Wray's response to Ted Lieu was this: well, I've never completely understood the term deep state, he said. So how could he possibly not know what a deep state is when he's in it? So then Jeff Sessions wanted to get rid of Andrew McCabe, another deep state player, a guy directly under Wray while he is newly the FBI director. And Sessions says, I want you to fire him. And Wray protected McCabe and resisted. What's that about? Where do we clean the swamp if we're protecting our own agency that's dirty from cleaning it up at the request of the administration and your superiors? So he has personal affection for James Comey. Do you think they're going to prosecute James Comey? Everybody's right now saying, oh, he's going to be one of the first ones prosecuted. I'm not so sure. I mean, all the guys at the top are his buddies. And they've been buddies for 20 years. And they've been deep state for 20 years. And they've been in the George W. Bush administration at the very least, and the Obama administration, and now the Trump administration. And they're like cats with diarrhea, right? There's a cat with diarrhea, and there are 3 cats in front digging the trench and 2 cats behind covering it up. What kind of deal is that? So that's Christopher Wray. He's our clean guy. That's number 1. In the background of my swamp cleaning, drain the swamp cover thumbnail is Elliot Abrams. And I have him whacking some poor guy in a rowboat with a V on it for Venezuela, in case you need defining for it. So he is currently the Assistant Secretary of State for Inter-American Affairs. And he was in office under Ronald Reagan in the 80s. He was the Assistant Secretary of State for Human Rights and Humanitarian Affairs. Is that a funny one? This is a swamp creature. So it's oxymoronic. It's absolutely ironic that he was the Assistant Secretary of State for Human Rights and Humanitarian Affairs. So here's one of the problems with Abrams, and that is that Lawrence Walsh, the Special and Independent Counsel with regard to the Iran-Contra matter, prepared multiple felony accounts against Abrams. And in 1991, Abrams admitted that he knew more than he acknowledged in his congressional testimony. He was sentenced to a $50 fine for lying, probation for 2 years, and 100 hours of community service. He was pardoned by George H.W. Bush in '92. So he skated right out from under a series of serious felonies with a $50 fine and probation, and then he was pardoned. So then, when Daddy Bush protected him in '92, and he was covering up for the Iran-Contra matter for George Sr., then little Georgie Jr., Shrubby I call him, appointed Abrams to the post of Special Assistant to the President and Senior Director for Democracy, Human Rights, and International Operations in the National Security Council in June of 2001. This is a couple of months before 9/11, right? Abrams was appointed a Special Assistant to the President and the NSC Senior Director for Near East and North African Affairs. So what is one of the things that he was doing while he was working with little Shrubby Bush? Well, he is accused of, and the London Observer said, that Abrams had advanced knowledge of and gave a nod to the Venezuelan coup attempt in 2002 against Hugo Chavez. So he has prior Venezuelan experience at knocking off people or attempting to knock off people who are at the head of the government in Venezuela. So if you don't think Abrams is a swamp creature, let me give you the next piece of it. He's a senior fellow for Middle Eastern Studies for the Council on Foreign Relations. Ding, 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 Council on Foreign Relations, there you go. Additionally, he holds positions on the Committee for Peace and Security in the Gulf. That's a good one. So he's in the Middle East and he's in South and Central America. The Committee to Free Lebanon and the Project for the New American Century. Now, what we should do with anybody that is part of the Project for the New American Century is we should either tattoo or brand on their forehead at their option, which we do, the Project for the New American Century, so that it is emblazoned for all to see at all times, because they're all dark, they're all bad, they're all evil, and anybody that carries that marker with them, not only should you have suspicion, you should start off with the position of, look, they're bad, dirty, and ugly, tell me why they're not. That's where you want to start. And finally, Abrams was one of the Bush administration's intellectual architects. That isn't oxymoronic. Intellectual architects of the Iraq War. And he's also, coincidentally, pro-Israel. Does that surprise you? So he's an intellectual architect of the Iraq War. What's the worst war we've ever been in? The most expensive war that's displaced as many people as anything and has lasted for longer than, I think, any other war we've ever had, and is now dragged us about between $4 and $6 trillion into a crazy war for which there is no end in sight. That's the architect that's now working to get rid of the head of Maduro in Venezuela. Good choice, Donald Trump. So Mike Pompeo is an evangelical Zionist who is all pro-Israel. He's also one of the biggest failures for North Korea, if we are to believe the information, that Kim Jong-un has said that he won't deal with Pompeo and that Pompeo is messing things up. Now, there's a seasoned diplomat for you. Is it all smoke and mirrors? Is it all Kim Jong-un's fault? Or does Mike Pompeo bear some of the responsibility for it? And how does that tie in with the fact that there was a no-deal meeting the last time that Trump met, but before that, when Tillerson was at the wheel, things worked a little better? How are we working with the swamp creatures, and what's their alternate agenda? And is Mike Pompeo promoting the alternate agenda? I think it's fair to say. So Pompeo is part of the Heritage Foundation, which is, ding, 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 not as bad as the Committee for the Progress of the New American Century, but it still did all kinds of proposals in favor of war and in favor of incursions. And guess what? No, you'd never guess. Mitt Romney's idea about the Massachusetts version of Romney Care and Obama's version of Obamacare came from the Heritage Foundation, which is the founding organization that covers and protects and guides and serves as a source of information for Mike Pompeo. Is that a good deal? I don't think so. Mike Pompeo is our friend. He's really a good guy. Let me tell you how that works. So he would favor and recommends that Congress pass a law reestablishing collection of all metadata and combining it with publicly available financial and lifestyle information into a comprehensive, searchable database. Legal and bureaucratic impediments to surveillance should be removed. In other words, Mike Pompeo is in favor of having the federal government collect everything about us. Now, they're already doing it, and they're doing it through global corporations like Google and Twitter and Facebook and a whole bunch of international companies, including ones in China and India and our Five Eyes buddies and all of their secret agencies, and of course the Mossad and every other intelligence agency working in Israel. So, but Pompeo would like to have it sanctioned and validated for all purposes so that nobody'd ever even potentially get in trouble for it. That's the kind of Secretary of State we want, right? And that's how we drain the swamp so that the little people have more protection. If you get that one, then follow me. So my least favorite guy, and this has been true for a long time, I'd love to be his executioner, is little Johnny R. Bolton, the Zionist pig, the pro-war guy, the guy who really, anytime he says pro-war, he and I should go in a cage together and do 3 rounds. And then whoever wins, that person gets to do the policy, right? And we'll decide on that basis. I would love it. I would just love it. That would be, I'd train for months and months, folks, in case you think I might lose. So here's little Johnny Bolton, and he has never seen a war he didn't like. Now, that doesn't mean that little Johnny Bolton ever was in a war. No, he's perfectly happy sending you and you and you to war. John Bolton wants you. So here he is. He's a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Bzz, there's another one. He's a senior advisor for the Freedom Capital Investment Management. He's a Fox News Channel commentator. Do you think those guys are all clean? I want to go through a list of them one of these days just for the fun of it. He's also a former member of the law firm of Kirkland & Ellis. He was a foreign policy advisor to Willard Mittens Romney in 2012. And guess what? The project for the new American century. Is that surprising? He is a war hawk, and he is an advocate for regime change in Iran, Syria, Libya, Venezuela, Cuba, Somalia, Yemen, and North Korea. And he's repeatedly called for the termination of the Iran deal, which, I kind of agree with. So 1 out of 8 or 10 isn't bad. So if you think that Trump's idea of getting out of Iran and Afghanistan and Syria, as he promised us he would do during his political campaign of 2016, any of that has happened, first of all, none of it has, right? None of it has. And even when he has announced reducing the troops and the rest of that, within 3 days they back off, which is something that infuriates me. But add that to the fact, and you have to add it, is that he put little Johnny brush-faced, broom-faced Bolton in trucking along behind him and then going out with Mike Pompeo and leading the way in warmongering and war drumming for the United States government, which nobody should ever do. Nobody should ever do. But not only that, there's a pile of these folks on this list. For instance, We're in Syria. Why are we there? Nobody knows. Is it stabilized now? Well, not because of us, not because of anything we did. And then there's Iran, which of course Bolton would love to just blast Iran until it's nothing but rubble. You've got Libya, which of course he already got his way thanks to Hillary and Obama. Venezuela, which they're pushing for right now. Why are they angry about Venezuela? You know, if it's a socialist government and it's going to fail, somebody can pick up the pieces. And it doesn't have to be anybody outside. If the Monroe Doctrine applies, we simply say, hey, look, all you foreigners, stay away, and we'll help make the thing fair and even. But no, we're going to flip it with our own picked guy. And why are we going to do it? Because it allows the central bankers in, it allows the oil in, it allows the manipulation of the cornerstone there for us to be, for our elites to be in control of the entire Western Hemisphere. You got Cuba. Hey, you want to go to war in Cuba? Somalia, Yemen, which is already there, and I guarantee you, I haven't checked it, but I guarantee you, little Johnny Bolton's been drumming up the storm with Saudi Arabia, and he obviously was an advocate for the increased military sales to Saudi Arabia while they're whacking off people's heads and destroying tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people's lives, and many thousands dying in Yemen on a yearly basis, and we're sanctioning it. So little Johnny Bolton is not a good guy, just in case you were wondering. So if anyone thinks that Trump is going to drain the swamp, the person that has to pull the plug, just in case you're wondering, with regard to federal offenses and or offenses within D.C. and or offenses against anyone who is a federal government officer for violations of federal law, ding, 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 like the FBI, like the CIA, like the NSA, like anybody else internal. If you were going to have a plug puller, that plug puller would be the Attorney General, right? And so who do we have as Attorney General? Well, we've got stinky William Barr. Why do I say William Barr is stinky? Well, he's been stinky forever. He's been stinky so long that it is hard to imagine that the taint could ever have left him. And there are no indications, zero indications, that he has flipped. In case people want to talk about, Q says these guys are flipping or whatever else, William Barr is not going to flip. And William Barr is a deep state operative and has been forever. Where did William Barr start out? Well, what's the organization that you in this community trust least that is affiliated with the United States government? What's the three-letter word of the agency that you trust least, that has done the most, and that has secret operatives in every corner of the world and is conducting its own income through drug running and trafficking and probably sex trafficking and guns, the whole works, right? So where did William Barr begin? Well, he began in the 70s with George H.W. Bush, and he became a senior man behind George H.W. Bush when George H.W. Bush was the CIA director. And there's every indication that the two of them operated in tandem and as a team. And the Drugging America, a Trojan horse written by Rodney Stick, indicates that there are whistleblowers who said that not only was George H.W. in on the Mena, Arkansas, Iran-Contra drugs for guns exchange, and in which you thought it was just a little deal, right? You thought it was just Barry Seal running back and forth and having a great time. Well, there are some indications that it was a $35 billion operation and that George H.W. was right at the core of it. So who was it that worked with him? And there are here whistleblowers who say, I can't say that, I wasn't there, right? So I'm not saying it, but I'm going to tell you who did. So for the purposes of operating there, the whistleblower has said that William Barr was one of the operatives for H.W. Bush, making sure that the drugs got back and forth to Mena, Arkansas. Then he stonewalled and destroyed the Church Committee, which was in the 70s, which was looking into the CIA and trying to find out whether they had covert operations and whether they were spying and whether they had people internal to the mainstream media. This was in the 70s. And Frank Church from Idaho was trying to find out and found out a bunch. And who was trying to keep anything from being disclosed? Well, it was William Barr. And the same William Barr that is going after Julian Assange right now, in case you're wondering. And then he had joined the intelligence team during Bush's vice presidency under Ronald Reagan, of course. And then he was a key player in the Iran-Contra operation, if not the most important member of the apparatus, simultaneously managing the operation while also fixing the legal end, ensuring that all of the operatives could do their jobs without fear of exposure or arrest. In his Attorney General confirmation, he vowed to attack criminal organizations. This is like the Patriot Act. It's an oxymoronic, absolutely black is white, white is black, 1984 cover-up. So he was going to go after the criminal organizations, drug smugglers, and money launderers. Well, what we have come to understand is that the only drug smugglers and money launderers that the government ever goes after are the ones that are interfering with the business of the CIA. He provided legal cover for Bush's illegal foreign policy and war crimes. He left Washington and went through the rotating door, like they all do, so they can make big money. And you watch, James Comey did the same thing, made tens of millions of dollars for his couple years out, and now he's going to go back and do it again. And if you think he's going to get prosecuted, I think you're wrong. So he went to the corporate world, where he took on numerous directorships and council positions for major companies. In 2007 and again from 2017, Barr was counsel for the politically connected international law firm of Kirkland & Ellis. Have you heard that name before already? Among its most notable other attorneys are Ken Starr, John Bolton, Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, and numerous Trump administration attorneys. Their clients include sex trafficker, pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Really? So he's working for the same law firm that got Jeffrey Epstein off. How does that work for you? And Mitt Romney's Bain Capital. There they are. All the dark swamp creatures coming and going. I did a report on 6 degrees of separation. If you look at this with all of these guys, there are no degrees of separation between the Obama administration, either of the Bush administrations, the Clinton administration, and now the Trump administration. And these guys have been swamp creatures for anywhere from 20 to 40 years, just in case you're wondering. When the highest level employees of the Trump administration have scales and reptilian tails and webbed feet and snouts this long and teeth all over in double rows, and they lie in the swamp with their eyes sticking out, you can be sure that they're not draining the swamp. And so I will close by saying to you, if you think that Donald Trump is going to be our fixer, I'm going to say to you, I don't think so. In closing, I hope that you appreciate this report. It was not fun to do, because obviously I would love as much as anybody that Donald Trump is on top of it and that he is fixing our country and he is doing as he promised to make America great again. Unfortunately, what I have to say, based both upon his announcements and failures to follow through, and upon the people that he has chosen to surround him, that he is not simply keeping his friends close and his enemies closer. He has brought people in who are conducting the business of the elites, the Zionists, the bankers, the wealthy, and they are not there for us. So they are all swamp creatures, and they are not going to make anything better. And I am sorry to say this, because I have waited as long as I could to see things get better. But it is my belief that they will not. If you like this, even if you didn't like what I had to say, please give a thumbs up, and I do appreciate your following. Thanks so much.